China is condemning a bill currently working its way through the U.S. Congress that criticizes Beijing's policies in Xinjiang. The House of Representatives passed the bill urging President Trump to call for the closure of the region's training centers. It also demands sanctions on senior Chinese officials and export bans. China's foreign ministry says the U.S. is slandering the situation in Xinjiang and distorting China's work to fight terrorism. Beijing adds that the American move violates international law and grossly interferes in China's internal affairs. The bill has yet to be approved by the U.S. Senate and the President, but it comes shortly after Washington passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act.
Hong Kong's chief executive has announced a new round of relief measures, which she says will be rolled out soon to help businesses and residents in Hong Kong ride out the economic downturn after months of anti-government protests in the city.
Over the past decade, we accumulated quite a healthy reserve, roughly about 1.1 trillion Hong Kong dollars. That's about 141 billion US dollars. So this is the time for us to tap into our fiscal capabilities to offer relief to the public in Hong Kong. We hope companies can help their employees save their jobs. That's quite critical.
Carrie Lam says nearly $3 billion US dollars has been allocated since August to bolster the economy. Meanwhile, she also made the government's attitude clear towards the United States Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, which was signed into law last week.
The Hong Kong government strongly opposes the passage and the signing into the law of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. It is wholly unnecessary and completely unfounded. Human rights and freedoms in Hong Kong are always protected by the Basic Law.
Calling out for multilateralism and stronger, more open free trade. Messages heard loud and clear at a cooperation dialogue between Asia and Europe in Chongqing.
If we work together, firm and united, we can win the race because we represent the majority and the just cause of international cooperation. The majority rules, justice will prevail.
Ban, who now chairs the Boao Forum for Asia, says cooperation areas for Asia and Europe are limitless. This comes as Europe has the most developed countries, while Asia has many still developing. In particular, he says the Belt and Road Initiative will turn Asia and Europe into one continent, instead of merely a geographical concept. One focal point of discussion: what will make the BRI a success in the eyes of European leaders and businesses?
Well, I think what needs to be done is to make sure that everybody in Europe understands that the BRI is not only a Chinese initiative, it's an initiative that works for all Eurasia, and it is in the interest of Europe of being part of a BRI, because in any case it will be done. It is important that it becomes a multilateral institution, a multilateral initiative.
They can provide an opportunity for countries that are concerned. Let's take, for instance, Central Asian countries to develop more dense regional infrastructure networks, and on this basis to have more internal trade and investment, and hopefully to diversify their economies.
Snam, one of the world's largest energy infrastructure companies, says there are huge opportunities for Italy to play a more active part in the BRI. The Italian company says the change in trends in energy mix from coal and oil to gas and renewable energies brings itself closer to China.
I think developing close partnership is what it needs, rather than just focus on individual business opportunities. And matching respective competence and needs is what it will take, we think, to be successful, which is what we are experiencing here in China, bringing our competence and know-how to the service of Chinese large players that don't have the same degree of several years of experience, but from whom we think we can learn other things.
A couple of phrases that keep cropping up here. European participants call on the need for mutual trust in order for the BRI to continue developing. Many also see climate change as an opportunity and not a challenge. Above all, leaders from Asia and Europe say there is still much to tap into each other's advantages in order to fully reap the benefits of a technological revolution.
You may be surprised at Pinduoduo's offerings of overseas merchandises, given that it is better known for its appearance in lower-tier cities. But that's what's just happening. Open the app and buying globally channel is right over there.
From cosmetics, grooming products, and clothing to snacks and healthcare supplements, you can literally find every category in nearly 1,000 overseas products brought in by Amazon. Amazon and Pinduoduo announced their new partnership 1 week ahead of this year's Black Friday, hoping to break into the market with a retail splash. So far, however, there's no official report of how they are doing. There are some indications on the websites themselves, but it's not impressive. Australian health supplements, for instance, sell on Pinduoduo for half of the Tmall price, but Tmall's monthly sales figure is 4 times that of Pinduoduo. Alex Shutter, partner at consultants Oliver Wyman, says even though Pinduoduo Amazon business model itself is not unique, what's intriguing about the partnership is the two players themselves.
I think it's a great example of two players at relatively opposite ends of the market looking to create something new that they hope will be very competitive in market. So here you have a honestly relatively classic case of an international player who thinks they have a great product and service offering that they can bring to consumers. And on the other side, a player who has great access to hundreds of millions of consumers looking to see how they can leverage that and bring a competitive offering. I think what's interesting going forward will be how it evolves from the current pilot that's planned into the next stage. In this case, what I think is interesting about the model is the potential scale it could get to.
Well, it's never easy to get a foothold in the Chinese e-commerce market, and it's going to be a seesaw battle for both new partners. According to iMedia research, Amazon's sales have been shrinking in China. It currently has a market share of only 5.7%, 0.3 percentage points down from the previous quarter. At the same time, Amazon competitor Alibaba's hold on China's cross-border e-commerce got even stronger after it acquired Kaola.com in the first half. And for Pinduoduo, attracting more big-spending consumers is likely to be its primary concern for now. One analyst says e-commerce competition is still tough, and the new alliance better have something more up its sleeve than just discount pricing.
We do believe that as an e-commerce platform, they have to actually work with the brands more closely to build a brand ecosystem. So far, we have seen quite heavy subsidies over the offer. And we don't know that whether this is going to be sustainable or not. So it's very interesting to see whether they have other alternatives to attract the Chinese consumers. I hope that there will be more new activities, especially on the back of a very strong social kind of element of Pinduoduo's competitive advantage.
Chinese consumers continue to buy more and more overseas goods through the internet. Cross-border e-commerce imports came to 1.9 trillion yuan last year, an annual rise of some 27%. Hoping to capitalize on this trend, Pinduoduo is targeting the introduction of 10,000 world-famous brands in the next 3 years, and Amazon will surely want to recover from its previous dismal showing in China.
Before departing for the NATO summit in London, US President Donald Trump reinstated tariffs on steel and aluminium imports from Brazil and Argentina because of their currency devaluations. Both Argentina and Brazil were among the few countries to receive tariff exemptions on steel and aluminium imports to the US last year. In the case of Argentina, exports to the US amounted to around $700 million in 2018. Few observers have suggested that the Brazil real and the Argentine peso's devaluation is the result of currency manipulation. Both central banks have stepped in this year to prop up the currencies, and most analysts agree that the devaluation is the result of market forces, as both the South American economies are struggling. But the peso and real devaluation has made these two agricultural powerhouses more competitive, and US losses have been Latin America's gain. Both Argentina and Brazil have taken advantage of the US-China trade war to sell more grain to Beijing. Argentina and Brazil both said they are surprised by the announcement and will not only seek clarification, but also to try to reverse Donald Trump's decision.
This summit's meant to be all about celebrating 70 years of NATO, the biggest and longest lasting military alliance in history. The reality, it's been a day of meetings in the fringes aimed at easing the stresses and strains within the organisation. As well as a series of bilateral meetings, there was the sound of clinking raised glasses in Downing Street and at a grand reception here at Buckingham Palace. But You know you've got a problem when the leaders of two of the most powerful NATO members get into a spat over whether the alliance is, quote, strategically brain dead, referring, of course, to Turkey's incursion into Kurdish-controlled Syria. The 29 NATO leaders move their summit to the countryside for the next stage, but their round-table talks will be kept to a minimum. No joint communique is expected. All this designed to eliminate the potential for further family rows. Discussion of NATO's longer-term strategic goals are, it seems, for another day.